What about the larger issue of private versus public costs? I mean, they're two very different animals, so it's hard to put them together. But do you have a comment in terms of James? If you could take a swing at this, what should companies think about in terms of, well, we're going to have a private cloud, we're going to have a public cloud, two very different animals pricing wise. What's your advice to them on that?
So, I mean, I kind of see there's private, there's community, and then there's public, and those aren't three distinct types. There's a continuum in between them. So there are some public cloud providers where anyone who's got a credit card off their bank is allowed to join up. There's other ones where there's more of a vetting process. There's certain types of clouds where only police forces are allowed to join, and then there's a private cloud which is literally just you. The more exclusive you go for, the more you ought to be paying for it. And so you really want to think about each application and exactly how private does it really have to be, and how much of a premium are you prepared to pay to get that exclusivity. And I actually think that in the future, private cloud will actually trade at a relatively fixed premium to public cloud, and you'll be able to hedge your future costs of private cloud by reference to things that are quoted on exchanges.
Max, do you have a sense of cost structure, private cloud versus public cloud? And many people say the private cloud is always going to be more expensive, but then again, it should be. Advice for people on that?
Well, I do think that it is, right? I mean, I do think that it's for most of the people the cost the private cloud will always be more expensive. There might be some cases of very large private cloud instances where it's not the case, but I do think in general the assumption is fair that it's more expensive. And I think, as James pointed out, right, the main driver for going private is really the concerns that you have in the security area. So you have to be willing to pay something on top of the public cloud price just to get this to get this piece of privacy. And people will make the decision. In the future, the decision points will be on different in different areas, because today there is a lot of discussion, especially in Europe, a lot of discussion about whether public clouds are secure or not. Mm-hmm. And over time, that point will move more and more towards getting the commercial benefits instead of because they learn that the security aspects are well treated in public clouds.
It seems like in Europe there's a greater sensitivity or greater response to the whole NSA, Snowden affair, with governments asking the providers for information, and some of the American companies turning over that information. And it seems like the European companies are more like, oh, we don't want to be involved with that at all. I mean, is that your sense on that?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's if you look at the holistic concept of how they run their IT, if it's any way more secure. But in general, I agree that in Europe, it's one of the top three things. Whenever you in Germany, especially when you talk to people in Germany, it's like question number 2. Whereas when you're in the U.S., it's somewhere down the road, right?
Right.
It's not as it's a lot of commercial discussions, economic benefits before, and then some time goes around security.
What is question number 1? I'm curious. If question number 2 is the security picture.
Question number 1 is probably also it's probably about the price. I'm not quite sure if it's really question number 2. I just wanted to say it's the very early
it's up there,
questions. Yeah.
Right. And the public versus private cloud cost issue. I mean, I know a lot of people say private isn't an advantage at all over your old-fashioned, IT infrastructure in-house. Cost, public versus private.
So I think you need to think of them as almost two different services. So you have a private cloud for things that run around the clock that need to be high secure, and then you have a private cloud, and then you have a public cloud for kind of variability and workloads that don't need such high security and tight regulation. I think in the future, consumers will need to use both to address their different business needs. As an economist, I suppose that Private cloud has more business risk associated with it because you are in charge of capacity planning it. So you have to make sure the capacity is there in your private cloud prior to it being needed. And you obviously don't want to have too much capacity there, because when it's not being needed, that extra space is going to waste. In the public cloud, this capacity planning is performed by the public cloud provider, and they absorb the risk. You don't need to worry about provisioning it in advance. You don't need to worry about spending money which isn't subsequently being utilized. So in terms of flexibility and growth, I think public cloud has got a lot going for it economically.
Mm-hmm. But of course, private will have other advantages that the public will not have, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I think you kind of need to evaluate the value of public and private based on what it's actually doing for the business rather than just how much is it costing.